right, well, I think that we'll get going this evening and people can certainly trickle in. I'd like to just briefly introduce myself and the team. I am Gabe Sherman. I'm a project manager for this project with the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District. And this evening, I'm joined by Michael Heyman, manager of our projects department, and also instrumental in this project over several years. I'd like to hand it over briefly to Jan with the City of Hopkins to introduce her team.
Great, thank you, Gabe. It's a pleasure to be here with you tonight. I'm Jan Youngquist. I'm the Community Development Coordinator with the City of Hopkins, and I'm joined by Kirsten Elverum, our Director of Planning and Development. I'd like to hand it over to Barrett with Aladdis.
Hi there, Jan. Thanks, everybody. My name is Barrett Corwin. I'm with Aladdis, the developer. I should be joined here by Bob Lux and Alex Polinsky from our team as well. Thanks, and we look forward to the work session tonight.
Hey, everybody. I'm Andrew Judd. I'm going to introduce the HDR Damon Farber design team. I'm the project manager for that team, and I'm joined here tonight by Kurt Behringer on our strategic communications team, and Jeff McMiniman and Andrew Montgomery, landscape architects from Damon Farber. I wanted to go through, excuse me, you want to go to the next slide? We're going to go through a couple logistics here on the meeting. Please note that this session is being recorded for posting to the project webpage later this week. Allow those who cannot be with us tonight to view the meeting. Please feel free to use the chat box to ask questions or make comments throughout the session. We will have an opportunity, though, for Q&A at the end of the meeting, where we'll request that you raise your hand to speak aloud. In the meantime, to access the chat box, please click on the chat bubble in the lower right-hand corner of your screen. And please share your comments with everyone so we can see them. If you'd like to view closed captions during the meeting, please click on the CC button in the lower left corner of your screen. You may also click on the down arrow next to the button to choose your preferred language for the captions. If you would prefer to hear the meeting interpreted live in Somali, please mute your volume on this meeting and follow the instructions at the bottom of the slide. The numbers, the meeting ID, and the passcode are all listed there. This information is also going to be put in the meeting chat, so you should be able to see that on the right-hand side. We do have a translator I'd like to introduce at the meeting. His name is Osman, and he'll be doing that translation, and he'll translate this paragraph. Thanks, you. Thanks, Osman. All right, let's go to the next slide. So this is our meeting purpose and overview, just a little bit of what we're going to cover tonight. We're going to be discussing the redevelopment of the 325. We're going to be discussing the redevelopment of the 325 Lake Road site in Hopkins, with a special focus on the design of the public spaces, which is the area nearest the creek. This meeting is part of an ongoing public involvement process for this site. So in addition to providing information to you, we want to continue collecting your valuable feedback to inform the vision for the site. We're going to begin the meeting by sharing some background information on the project and report back on what we heard from the project's previous public engagements that happened last year. We'll share a preview of our draft design plans, and then we're going to ask for your feedback on some of the site amenities and educational themes via an interactive activity. And that's going to require you to open either another web tab, or you can use your phone. So there'll be instructions in that. We will share next steps, and then we're going to have, like I said, a Q&A session. All information collected at the meeting tonight is going to be used by this team, City Hopkins, Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, and the developer who's also on the call with us, Aladdis, as we continue to design the site in the coming months. A summary of the design work will be provided in a future Minnehaha Creek Watershed District email blast or blog post. So with that, I'd like to pass the meeting over to Michael Heyman with the Watershed District to share some background information. Thanks.
Thanks, Andrew. Good evening, everyone. My name is Michael Heyman, and as the project planning manager for the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District, I want to both thank you for coming out this evening and, of course, give you a little bit of background on this exciting project. 325 Blake Road sits in the middle of the Minnehaha Creek Greenway. It's a decade-long improvement effort to reconnect the community to Minnehaha Creek while restoring this important asset and treating contaminated stormwater before it enters the creek. At its heart, 325 Blake Road is a regional stormwater opportunity, but it provides a much greater prospect than that, given its location within this wonderful community. And that's really what tonight is all about, getting feedback from all of you on what will help make this a special place. So with that, we're going to watch a short video about the site for some added context, and then I can talk a little bit more about where we are in this process and what some of the next steps will be.
In 2011, the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District purchased a 17-acre industrial site in Hopkins, nestled between Minnehaha Creek, the newly rebuilt Blake Road, the future light rail, and a regional bike trail. Gazing past the old warehouse to the banks of the Minnehaha Creek, where it had been hidden for decades, the Watershed District saw a rare and exciting opportunity, a chance to create a place where people and nature could thrive together. The 325 Blake Road Restoration and Redevelopment is an effort to marry two sets of goals. The restoration effort will use 4 to 6 acres of the site to improve and create access to Minnehaha Creek. On the remaining land, the Watershed District and City of Hopkins are working to find a redevelopment partner who will transform the site into a new neighborhood that celebrates these environmental enhancements and contributes to the social fabric of the community. These goals were developed through years of discussion with residents, businesses, and community institutions. The result will be a unique community asset, a place to relax in nature, connect with community, and get where you want to go. First, let's take a step back. What's so special about the work at 325 Blake Road? Like much of Minnehaha Creek in this area, in decades past, this stretch was ditched and hidden behind industrial buildings. The project will reconnect the community to this hidden gem and use natural features to treat polluted stormwater from the surrounding region. It also completes a key link in the Minnehaha Creek Greenway, a system of green space and trails through places like Cottageville Park, the Minnehaha Creek Preserve, and Methodist Hospital campus. The site also connects to the broader region via the Green Line Extension Light Rail and Cedar Lake Regional Trail that run through the western suburbs to downtown Minneapolis and beyond. Finally, potential redevelopment in the remainder of the site will tie these elements together to create a vibrant new neighborhood, making it a welcoming place where people might live, work, or shop.
So as you can see, this really is a special place for the community, and it has so much potential. The timeline in front of you describes where we've been, where we are in the process, and where we're going. And beginning in the spring of 2021, we hosted a series of listening sessions to focus on the vision for this site. Following that effort, around the time of selecting Lattice as our development partner, we hosted in-person and virtual community open houses to gather more feedback and get your input. Those efforts continued into the fall with additional neighborhood meetings and community engagement efforts. So this evening, we're here at the winter 2021-22 community open house icon that you see on this timeline, and we're focusing on the interpretive themes and amenities for this site, getting your feedback specifically on some of the elements that will eventually make their way onto the site. Following this effort, we'll complete our site design, and that's all in anticipation of a two-phase construction schedule. The first phase will focus on infrastructure, site restoration, public areas, and some of the multifamily housing. The second construction phase, which will start a few years out, will focus on delivering the additional multifamily housing that's being planned for the site. And so with that, I want to turn it over to Andrew Montgomery. He's one of our great designers with Damon Farber, and he's going to talk a bit more about how community engagement efforts to date have influenced and shaped the site plans that have become foundation for what you're seeing this evening. So with that, I'll turn it to Andrew.
Thanks, Michael. My name is Andrew Montgomery with Damon Farber Landscape Architects. These first few slides, I'm going to talk about the engagement we've heard to date. We heard during our engagement effort last November that residents valued the sense of community in Hopkins, stemming from its diversity of residents, safety, ease of access, affordability, love of arts, and a multitude of regional trail connections. There's an appreciation for Minnehaha Creek as a historic waterway, natural resource, and a peaceful and restorative gathering place. The site itself is significant because it serves as the gateway to the eastern part of the city. It is located in an area with a diverse population and serves as an important connection between nature and new housing and commercial areas. We heard that people were most interested in seating with views of the creek, canoe and kayak access, and picnicking, followed by swimming and fishing. Respondents also added the importance of simply walking along the creek. Next slide. This slide highlights the top priorities identified during the survey, 5 being the highest rating and 1 being the lowest. We heard that creek access and regional trail connections ranked as a priority. There's a desire for informational signs and creative displays about stormwater treatment, the history of Minnehaha Creek, and creek water quality and levels. There is an interest in promoting active recreation, kayaking, bike connections, walking paths, as well as retaining space for more quiet relaxation and reflection. There are also creative ways to use water as an incorporated water-focused art element on the site. Next slide. So what we heard in terms of interpretive themes, so we have some images up to the left on how these themes could potentially be applied to the site. We're really just exploring this at a high level, and we'd like to gather your input on which of these themes you'd like to see. We could explore multiple themes. The first one on the top left is looking at local ecology, highlighting flora and fauna. And it's actually a combination of importance of Minnehaha Creek to Native American culture. That sign is actually translating Dakota of different important plant species to Dakota people and what they were used for. So that's kind of a combo one. The top right is Minnehaha Creek history. So just an idea of, we could show the watershed etched out in a panel with these different sub-watersheds feeding into that. The third one is stormwater management strategies. So a big part of the development to the north of the site is going to have a lot of stormwater management features, innovative stormwater management features in it, as well as we're going to have a pond on this site, which is going to manage stormwater. Michael was just talking about this from 2 large catchment areas, and Andrew's going to talk about that a little bit more later. So I think we think there's an opportunity, and we've heard that people are interested in hearing about how that gets interpreted on the site. Water quality statistics. So what is the historic water quality in the creek? How has it changed over time? So that's another area that we can interpret. Already talked about this one, but the importance of Minnehaha Creek to Native American culture. The bottom left is showing, again, Dakota interpretation. So actually just translating different Dakota names into English and vice versa. And then community stories. So who lives in Hopkins, a celebration of the local population and culture, an opportunity to tell stories about the neighborhood. So those are the 6 interpretive themes that have been identified, and a lot of that has come from community input. So now I'll hand this off to Andrew Judd to review our draft plans.
Hey, everybody. What we're looking at now is an overall site plan. And you can see, what I mentioned at the beginning about this being focused on the strip that's kind of closest to the creek here. This is what the district is developing under their plan, and there's the developer Aladdis that's doing a part of the site on the upper part of the screen here. Just for your orientation, this isn't facing north. North is kind of to the right of your screen, and the creek's flowing towards the left, so left is downstream. We are just talking about we are talking about the district portion of the site tonight, but our portion and the developer portion of the site are totally integrated together. So when you're out there looking around, you know, you're not going to notice that there's this difference. And there's a lot of really cool features that are going to be, that are being considered for the developer area. And I would say, you know, it's a bit more of a formal, and it's got more features to it, you know, more overall features to it. And then as you move closer to the creek, which is the area that we're talking about, we've kind of got some, what I would call, it's a little bit of a more of a rustic and natural spaces for the public to engage with. So like we talked about at the beginning of the meeting, there's a lot of great features that have been incorporated both into this portion of the project and the developer portion. A lot of those items that Andrew Montgomery went over have been included. We have a stormwater cascade. There's going to be flowing water through the developer portion of the site that interacts with the pond. A lot of trails and access and other features that we're going to preview for you tonight. And just as a quick overview, you know, we've divided it into different areas that we've titled here. You can see we're going to talk about Gateway to Greenway. We're going to talk about a nature-based play area. We're going to talk about the landing, and we're going to talk about the trailhead and the overlook. And Andrew Montgomery from Damon-Farber is going to cover that. But before we get to that, I really wanted to talk really briefly about, you know, one of the major reasons that we're undertaking this project and the district's undertaking this project. So if you want to go to the next slide. And that's stormwater treatment. And Michael Heyman discussed this at the beginning of the presentation. You know, one of the overall objectives of the Minnehaha Creek Watershed District is managing the Minnehaha Creek watershed and also improving the water quality in there. So that's a really important component of this project. What you're seeing here on the right-hand part of the screen is a map of the project site. So the Blake Road site is shown in blue, and there's two urban storm sewer systems that are right now directly discharging into the creek. One is the Lake Street storm sewer system, and that's what you see on the north part, the upper part of the screen here. And that has 30 acres of urban land use that are flowing directly into the creek. And then there's the Powell Road storm sewer, and that's the bottom right portion of your screen or south. And that includes 226 acres of industrial land use, and that's flowing directly to the creek right now. So the vision for this site is not only to provide some great public amenities, but also to improve the water quality. So if you want to go to the next slide. And how we're going to do this is, like I mentioned in the last slide, currently we've got storm sewers that are flowing directly into the creek. This is creek, untreated stormwater, you know, with grit and pollutants and other things. So by installing this pond and a few other features around the site, what we're going to do is we're going to break that connection. And we're going to provide some filtration and we're going to provide some settlement. So what will happen is that stormwater flows into the pond, and then as it makes its way out, it's a much cleaner, the quality of the water is a lot cleaner because many of the pollutants and particulates and other things are settled out. So it's providing much cleaner water to the creek, which, you know, is one of the overarching goals of this project. So that's how that concept works. And when you see that pond, which is also going to be a nice visual amenity, it has some purpose to it too. It's providing a really valuable stormwater treatment for these regional storm sewers. So with that, I'm going to pass it to Andrew Montgomery from Damon-Farber, and he's going to walk through those spaces that we talked about at the beginning.
All right, so we're going to start off looking at the trailhead and overlook. Just to orient people, there's a little key plan on the bottom right-hand side of this page, and that'll show you kind of where we are on the site. So this is along Cedar Lake LRT light rail transit trail, and that's the existing trail that's out there today. I think it's getting redone right now. But anyways, and the intersection of our new trail, which we're calling the Minnehaha Creek Greenway Trail. On the upper right-hand side, you can see the pond, and there's a short little spur that'll connect up to the development. So within this trailhead, there will be, first and foremost, a trailhead kiosk for orientation. So we'll have Three Rivers Park District standard map kiosk system there that'll show you the entire network of Cedar Lake Trail, as well as this connection And our Greenway Trail will connect over to Cottageville Park, further to the north. Then there'll be some bike facilities there, bike parking, a bike fix-it station, a drinking fountain, and then to the bottom of the page, there's an opportunity to have a small overlook with some benches, some interpretive signage. So there's a really nice view of the creek there, and we'll kind of look at some different options for amenities in this area. We'll be looking at that during the Mentimeter, the interactive portion of this activity. And then we'll have a seat wall is there as well, and then a small planting buffer to separate this trailhead from the trail. Next slide. So we have some 3D views of what that might look like. This is kind of an axon view looking down into the space. You can see the drinking fountain off to the right, a few trash receptacles off to the left, those two kiosk signs. We're thinking these would be limestone seat walls through here, but we're still looking for input on what these different seating elements might be. Next slide. Here's kind of an on the ground view, so you can see the creek through the trees, and we're trying to preserve as many of the trees as we can. We've gone through and done a tree survey and identified the high quality vegetation in this area, and the trail is really adjusting to preserve those high quality trees when possible. So you can see little glimpses of the creek there, and then the trail kind of continuing down into the distance, and you have a little view of the landing down there as well. Next slide. Just another view of those kiosks. And we're thinking the pavers here would be permeable pavers. The interpretive signage could be about the history of the creek. It could have information about the water quality in the creek. Next slide. So a view looking down Cedar Lake Trail, kind of as you're going towards downtown Minneapolis here, but as you're approaching the trail heading east, this is what you'd kind of see. Next slide. And if you were going down Cedar Lake Trail and you took our Greenway Trail into the site, you would go down a hill and you would be met pretty quickly with this area we're calling the landing. You would have the stormwater pond off to the left and views of the development off to the left. But to the right, you're looking out across the creek. It's more natural. And then at this landing, it's really a front door for people that are coming down the creek on watercraft, and then also an opportunity for people on the trail to walk down and get close to the water, touch the water, a little hangout spot. So we've incorporated small picnic nodes or picnic areas where there could be picnic tables, different seating elements, and you'll see some options for these picnic areas. We're thinking a temporary location for kayak storage. That wouldn't be long-term. It's more a location if you had your kayak or canoe, you wanted to lock it up and go grab a bite to eat in this new mixed-use development. There's some informal seating, kind of logs, benches to keep it less formal. And then we're also showing some hammock posts. The posts would be permanent, kind of bring your own hammock situation. I think we are showing some options for a permanent fixed hammock as well, if that's desired. And then we are looking at possibly having a little overlook here. That's at number 1 with a pergola. We are using pergolas as a kind of a branding strategy. So there's pergolas in the development, there's pergolas at the Gateway Plaza. So that those things kind of tie together and make the space feel cohesive. Next slide. We have some 3D views of that. So this kind of gets you into the scale of the space. You can see the picnic area there to the middle right of the screen, the hammock posts, different areas to launch and just pull up your canoe. Next slide. Again, just a ground level view of what this space might look like. The pond would be on the other side of the trail. You can see the trail ascending that hill up to the trailhead off in the distance. Next slide. So here we have 4 concepts for what these picnic areas could look like. And we explored a variety of formal, informal spaces, kind of separating them out into multiple spaces. Some would work better for larger groups, like this concept is taken from a really famous landscape architect, Jen Jensen, but it's the idea of the council ring. It's meant to be more of an educational space. So someone in the center could be, providing a little lecture, or it could also work just for larger groups hanging out. But it's a little bit more of a formal treatment of that space, having the seat wall that goes around the perimeter or edge. So that's the first concept, concept A. Next slide. Concept B, so this one's a little less formal, a little bit more casual. So you'd have these boulders that would define an aggregate surface, which would be ADA accessible. We are showing some bike parking in this one up near the trail. So if you were going to stop here and eat lunch, you'd have a spot to park your bike and lock it up, and you wouldn't have to worry about it. And then we're showing 2 picnic tables here. It could be 1 picnic table with an ADA. So we could have an ADA picnic table where someone in a wheelchair could use that table. It's basically an extra long picnic table without benches over that end piece. Next slide. So that's concept B. And we'll have a chance to vote on this during the interactive activity. This one is a little bit more of a modern take. So we've separated it out into 2 smaller picnic areas, and then we've introduced this architectural element which frames views of the creek. So we don't have a definitive location per se for these, but we could align these picnic areas like there's a really beautiful willow tree in the creek, or if there's a riffle, or we know that birds congregate in this area, that these frames could help frame those views. We didn't think a pergola in this location really made a lot of sense because it is a more woodland environment. We don't really need a pergola for shade. So that's concept C, a little bit more modern, cleaner lines. Next slide. And this one's even more modern. So we've taken this kind of angular geometry and imposed it over the site to create these 2 smaller gathering areas. So we have these L-shaped benches where small groups could gather. This concept doesn't really have a table for picnicking, but it's more of a quiet contemplative space that you could sit and view the creek. Again, bike parking on this one, we're thinking it's an aggregate pathway. But this is a little bit more of a modern interpretation, a little bit more formal of a concept. And we think there's 2, potentially 3 opportunities to do these picnic areas along the creek. Next slide. So if you continued further down that trail, you would meet an intersection. That's kind of where that number 1 is on this plan, on the top of the plan. And that is what's going to lead you into the development. So just further to the top of the plan is going to be some townhouses across the road. If you took a left on that spur, that's basically a sidewalk that leads you to a series of restaurants. If you went right, that would take you over to the Lake and Blake intersection. But then you could also go right and cross a bridge over the Minnehaha Creek into the smaller triangular space, which we've been toying around designing a nature-based play area. The previous engagement effort in November, we were showing a tower in this location. It was a little bit more formalized play, and we kind of, the feedback that we gathered is that might be duplicative of what's going on in Cottageville Park. And so we wanted to kind of take a step back, and maybe this is more an opportunity to hang out by the creek, and you'll see some precedent images of what we're kind of looking at in this area. We're interested to hear if that kind of aligns more closely with what you were thinking, but just a little less formal play, more geared towards passive, hangout recreation space. And then the number 12 there, we're showing a future connection over to Cottageville Park. That wouldn't be part of our project. That would be a city initiative to do bump outs to make a little safer crossing there and some striping. And I think that's everything on this one. Next slide. I knew I was going to miss something, but that's all right. We can talk about it on this slide. So there are these 3 gorgeous oaks on that site, and our plan is adjusted to preserve those oaks. And one idea, you'll see the second image to the left, is using this rope play structure idea. This is a play structure that doesn't hurt the existing tree, but kind of integrates it with existing trees. So I think that's kind of a playful idea we'd like to hear more input on. There could be an educational space there. If a class wanted to do some learning or look at kind of nature-based learning, whether it's flora and fauna. Again, nature play, so using whole tree logs to create play environments. And then there's also an opportunity for flexible gathering space. And then this top image is just an elevation of what that bridge could look like. It's still quite conceptual, but that's kind of the span that we're looking at and the aesthetic, a little bit more rustic. Next slide. And then lastly, this is what we're calling the gateway to Minnehaha Creek Greenway at the intersection of Lake Street and Blake Road. So if you were to continue, if you didn't go across that bridge and you went into the development, that spine, we're calling it the spine road, it's the main road that goes to the development. That's coming out on that left-hand side, kind of where it says Lake Street. And so you could cross the street at Lake Street, Lake and Blake, and come into this plaza. And this plaza is meant to really act as this beacon to announce Cottageville Park, which is just across the creek, and this entire greenway system. So from the road, Blake Street, if you're driving in your car, this would have a lot of presence out on the road, and it's meant to function as this urban plaza. So we have this urban context at Lake and Blake, and we've tried to have this plaza kind of reach out and draw people in to this space. And within the space, we have a central element. It could be water, it could be public art. We're thinking it's probably more like public art. We haven't fully defined that yet. And then it's surrounded by this pergola with some hanging benches, some swing benches. On the back side, there's a series of stairs that bring you down to the creek. And then there's also an ADA pathway that brings you down as well. That's kind of that gray zigzag pattern. And there's a series of block benches that are sprinkled throughout there. And it, again, informal, casual way to provide opportunities just to sit and be in nature and view the creek. Next slide is a section cut. So that top image, you can see Blake Road up on the left. That yellow is the plaza. In the background, you can see the idea of the pergola. We have a precedent image on the bottom left that shows this idea of a swing bench in the pergola. Public art is that next image. That would be in the center of that plaza. And then water access, this kind of idea of getting down closer to the creek. And then we have the stone block seating that would be on that back side. We're thinking these pavers would be permeable pavers just to really honor water quality in the creek and reduce the impact of this plaza. So with that, I think that's all I have for graphics, and I'll hand it off to Kurt to start our engagement activity.
All right, great. Thank you, Andrew. All right, everybody. So up next, we're going to do a bit of a interactive live polling activity for you here, and we're going to ask you to get out your phones, which seems a little counterintuitive during a meeting where you're supposed to be paying attention, but that's kind of what makes this fun. Alicia did just post this information on the screen, also in the chat, if you'd like to access it there. But basically, we're going to ask you to go to this menti.com and enter this code. If you have a smartphone, you can just scan this QR code here on the right, and then it'll prompt you to put in the code 2273138. And once again, looks like a few people are getting in there right away, so we've got some seasoned veterans here. If you don't know how to access that chat where this information is posted, it's in the lower right-hand side of your screen. There's a chat bubble there. Click that, and you'll see where Alicia has posted this information. If you're on your phone, you'll have to click the 3 dots on the lower part of your screen to access that chat. All right, we'll give folks a few more minutes here, just in case we're having any issues. Once you are in, I see a few folks are doing that now. Please click that heart that you see on the screen. That kind of indicates that you've made it and you're in. If for any reason you're unable to participate in our Menti right now, you can participate later on the district's website. They'll be creating a survey with these same questions that we'll be running you through. All right, we're at 15. Let's give it just 30 more seconds here. One more note, we'll be collecting your input during this activity on the different design areas that Andrew just walked us through, those 4 picnic options that he also mentioned, the different site amenities, and the interpretive or educational themes. Just looking at that number, seeing if we're stalling out at 15. I think that should be about right. Got a few more people hitting the hearts. Thanks for that. All right, Maddie, I think we're good. We're going to move forward with 15 here. If you're still having issues, no problem. We'll have these instructions up at the top of the page here if you're still trying to get in. All right, so this first question, where are you joining from? Let us know where you're logged into the meeting from, either right near the development site in the neighborhood, or the city of Hopkins, the greater metro area, or somewhere else. One more note here as well, as we're kind of learning this Mentimeter technology, you'll need to hit the submit button, and I see a lot of people have done that. That allows your answer to be tracked and then shown live here. So what we're seeing on the screen right now is the live results that people are voting in. And in our next questions, I'll hand it over to Andrew here, but I want to make a quick note that we're going to have you have a list of different options in these different groups, and we'll ask you to prioritize those on a list on a scale from 1 to 3, 1 being a low priority, 3 being a high priority, something you'd like to see. And we ask that you only rate about 1/3 or so of the options as your high priority, and kind of give some deeper thought to where the other options fall in your preference. All right. I think we had 15 originally. We're at 13 now. Maybe a couple are choosing to skip this question. That's all right. Looks like the majority of folks, though, are joining us here from the city of Hopkins. Thanks, everyone, for coming out. And with that, I'll pass it over to Andrew.
Hello. I think I might have had a connection issue there for a second, cut out. Hello.
We can hear you, Andrew.
We hear it.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Can someone remind me what we're looking at for, oh, which is your favorite part? Sorry.
Yep.
So of those 4 areas that we just looked at, which of these 4 were your favorite? And we want to include the pond as well. So the pond is a feature in and of itself. So of those 5, which was your favorite? All right, looks like the landing. It's ranked highly. The play area. I wish I was a sports announcer in my previous life. I could narrate this a little bit better. All right, so that's 13. Let's I think that's all 13. So let's move on to the next question. So this is the opportunity to vote on those 4 picnic area designs. So just as a reminder, concept A was the council ring. Concept B were the picnic tables and an informal ring. Concept C had the frames, the views of the creek. And concept D was that angular geometry with 2 smaller areas for gathering. And this one, I believe, is a sliding scale. So slide, 3 is your most preferred, 2 is, is so-so, 1 not so excited about. All right. Concept B was the first one that we drew. So it's nice that our intuition was right. It's like concept C is kind of going to the horse races, watching which pony is going to reach the finish line first. So it looks like concept B has a slight margin. So we're going to give a few more seconds for people to get their last votes in. All right. So seating options, there's a lot of different spaces on this site and a lot of different opportunities for different types of seating. So we have a variety of seating options here. And you could vote for multiple. The first one is going to be backed benches, a little bit more comfortable if you're sitting somewhere long term. The second option is swing benches, kind of that idea in the Gateway Plaza, having a pergola and then the swinging bench. Option 3 is a seat wall with a wood top. We were kind of showing something similar to that at the trailhead. Option 4 would be movable or lounge seating, so something that you could move, movable tables and chairs. Option 5 is the picnic tables. Option 6 are hammocks. Option 7 would be stone seating. So really, which of these are your favorite? Which of them are you not so excited about? We're asking you to kind of prioritize, but these aren't mutually exclusive. I think we can have multiple of these on the site. So it looks like backed benches is scoring highly. Picnic tables. A couple more votes for swing benches. All right. I think we could probably go to the next one. So we have a few different slides here for engaging with the creek. The first one is a kayak launch. One thing I didn't mention before, but the development is looking at having a boathouse with kayak rental. So that would be that landing area. The second image is engaging with the creek, very similar to that landing. This is at Arden Park on Minnehaha Creek, if people are familiar with that project. The third one is tubing. We know tubing is a popular activity on this site. Not that we need to design specifically for tubing, but if you're interested in that, we want to hear from you. And then the last one is temporary storage for canoes. So which of these ways of engaging with the creek are you most interested in? All right. So it looks like just having an opportunity to go down and engage with the water, get close to the water, try and spot some fish, maybe dip your toes in. That's ranked pretty highly along with canoe and kayak launch. Bike facilities. So the top two images are for bike parking. That top right image is kind of hard to read, but what that's trying to convey is more artistic bike parking. So we collaborate with an artist to design a custom bike rack. The first one is more of your traditional bike parking post. The third bottom left image is a bike fix-it station. We have a drinking fountain. That drinking fountain would also have like a small little dog bowl at the bottom. And then the last image is wayfinding at Three Rivers Park District kiosk. So which of those 5 elements are you most interested in seeing? So standard bike parking, artistic bike parking, fix-it stations, drinking fountains, kiosk and wayfinding. So it looks like most of these are high priority. All right. Looks like we've been getting about 13 responses on each one of these, and we're at 13. So I think we could move along. The Overlook, we have opportunities for a few different elements or amenities. We have that top left image is a pergola. The top right image is a set of binoculars. That upper overlook, there are some filtered views of the creek, and we think it could be fun to have a set of binoculars. And when I was out on site a month ago, we saw a number of bird species down in the creek. So just an opportunity to get a little closer view of them. And then the last image is interpretive signage. This one is kind of, again, framing views in a landscape through these little portals. And I think those little portals, they have some text or some information on them that tell you what you're looking at and how the creek has changed. I mean, that could be explored in a number of ways at interpretive signage. But of those 3, which would you like to see? And It looks like this one is maybe prioritization and not the sliding bar. So it's like pergola and interpretive signage are neck and neck right now. Just waiting on a few more. It's like one more response maybe. All right, maybe we could go to the next one if you haven't gotten yours in. Okay, cool. So for that play area, we have a variety of different options there. So the top left is nature-based play. The top right is contemplative, unprogrammed space. And then the two middle images are age groups that we're designing the playground for. So the one on the left is 2 to 5-year-old play. The one on the right is geared more towards 5 to 10. We design playgrounds differently for those two different age groups. Bottom left is education. And I'm sorry, the bottom right is unprogrammed space. So flexible space for people to play in, to gather, basically just flexible space for any use. And that top right one, yeah, is contemplative. It's not the best image for that, but it's, you know, for that nature play area, do we want space that's not associated with play, just for viewing the creek or hanging out, not associated with as much play? So it looks like flexible space is ranked highly. Nature play. All right, it looks like we have 12 responses. We had 12 on the last one. Nope, there's our 13, 14, 15. Wow. Got a few more people responding to playground. All right, I want to leave enough time at the end to, got a few last announcements at the end, but I think there's just a few questions here. So which of all these features or site amenities which of those are your favorite? Maybe we can go to the next slide to show the options. Or no, this is an open-ended question. So there should be a Wordle that shows up in the center here. So this is more generally, what are your favorite amenities or features on the site? What do you get the most excited about? Is it the play area? Is it the landing or the kayak launch? The binoculars didn't rate very highly, but now's your chance. If you love the binoculars, you can vote for that one now. There's our Wordle starting to take shape. So this is a dynamic system, and I think you can do a few inputs, so you might get 2 or 3 options put in there.
And you can also hit the submit button a few times too, if you want to put something else in there that you see.
Yep.
And as you add more words, certain words are getting bigger. So right now, creek access seems to be top, but if you see something else in there that you like and you want to make it bigger, you could also kind of piggyback on someone else's vote.
Great point. If you want to piggyback on binoculars, oh, I'm just kidding. All right, creek access to the water, play area, popping out. Got 22 responses, the popular one. 24. All right, any last minute ideas? Let's give it another 20 seconds. This one you got to type in. It's a little more work, so I want to give everyone enough time to get their ideas down. Oh, I see the pond up there. Awesome. We're gonna have such a nice piece of art at the end of this. All right, let's move on to the next question. I think we've got one more. So educational, I think we have another one after this. So educational themes. These are the themes that we talked about at the beginning. So we have interpretive themes around local ecology, flora and fauna, the Minnehaha Creek history, stormwater management strategies, water quality statistics, importance of the creek to Native American culture, and celebrating community stories. So which of these are a high priority to you? Which of these do you want us to see interpreted? And we have some examples here. We're thinking beyond signage. So this is an part of the design that we're really excited to explore. Like the local ecology highlighting flora and fauna, that might not be just a sign. It could be a bird blind or something. So we want these to be immersive and interactive and fun features that are integrated into the design. It's not just a sign. So we'll take these themes, the ones that rank highly, and start to explore those and what those might look like in a future phase. These are just some preliminary ideas off to the left. Looks like we got 13 votes. I think we had between 13 and 15 on the previous questions. 14. There's our 15. See if we can get any higher than that. All right. So were there any of those themes, were there any that we were missing? Did we miss something? I think that's really the question. Should we be thinking about other things besides those themes? So health and wellness, that's a great one. Promoting active lifestyles, I think that really aligns well with our goals. Sustainability. Again, another large goal of this project, the pond, is managing stormwater that's currently going untreated into the creek. Climate change. Yep, sustainability. So using, one thing we haven't really talked about is we do have some tree removals on this site. There are some ash that are out there, boxwood, box elder, and some of those larger ash could be reused. So there's a nice sustainable option there, whether it's for the hammock poles or for some of the informal seating or wayfinding. A lot of ways to reuse some of those materials. How to protect the creek. Excellent. Birding. Composting. All right, we got 15. Seasonality. Oh. Excellent. Great ideas. So I think that was our last, well, we got 20 responses. So I think you might be able to respond multiple times on this one. But that is the end of the Mentimeter exercise. And so I think well, real quick, I think I'm supposed to talk about, hold on, let me look at my script. I think I was supposed to talk about how we're going to use that input. So currently we're in design development, and we're progressing through design development into construction drawings. And we're really aiming towards June, and Gabe will talk about that in further detail in a second here. But we'll be taking your input and starting to make material selections, starting to select furnishings, and refining those interpretive themes into a more finalized design. And so we'll be progressing that over the next few months, and I'll hand it off to Gabe here to kind of talk about next steps moving forward.
Great, thank you, Andrew. Well, I don't know about everyone else, but that was really fun for me to see all those answers come in live on the Mentimeter, and just how those how the word clouds change, and watching the horse race. So I really appreciate everyone logging in to do that. As Andrew mentioned, you know, we'll take this input, and it gets rolled into how we think about our next iteration of the design. And most immediately, we are looking to take sort of what you've seen in a draft form this evening, and really refine that by the end of February to bring to our board of managers for their consideration. And that's what we would refer to as our 60% design. So we're getting pretty close to having the final design. You'll see that all the sort of bones of the project are there. And then really after that, it's, you know, we're looking at site, the details and finishing touches that would contribute to a complete project design, hopefully by this summer. So of course, we'll keep everyone informed as we keep progressing. You know, we'll be updating our website and sending out future project emails. Now, of course, this is just one part of the redevelopment of the overall site. And so I did want to give Jan from the City of Hopkins just a moment to talk about what the city is thinking of at the same time that we're working on these interpretive themes and signage. The city has been thinking really carefully about how the overall project really blends into the fabric of the existing neighborhood.
Great, thank you, Gabe. So before I launch into next steps, I just wanted to let folks know that in December, the Hopkins City Council approved a planned unit development and site plans for 4 multifamily buildings on the development portion of the site. It's going to provide a wide variety of housing options for Hopkins residents. Site plans for the townhouses and the restaurants that you saw near the pond will come in the future. But the development area also includes a lot of public gathering spaces. There are plazas, promenades. There is the water cascade that will lead people from Blake Road into and through the site. Aladdis has done a great job in making the design very bicycle and pedestrian friendly. And integrated in with the portion of the site that we've talked about tonight. So the city and Aladdis, in conjunction with the Watershed District, are going to lead a community engagement process to look at how people will use and travel through the development portion of the site. And that's going to help inform wayfinding. So getting people into and through the site, connections to the Blake Road Light Rail Station, to the Cedar Lake Regional Trail, Cottageville Park, and of course to all of the wonderful areas we've talked about tonight and going down to the creek. And so we're going to be doing engagement on the wayfinding and the public art. And I was really watching the Wordle tonight to see what people were excited about. And I was really happy to see art, bike features, gatherings, public realm, and somebody threw in dining opportunities. So it's great to hear that that's what excites people. And I ask you to stay tuned so you can help inform those areas of the development portion of the site. We're planning to launch that engagement this spring or summer, and we will be letting people know through various channels through our social media, Hopkins Connections. We'll coordinate with the Watershed District and their mailing lists. So we hope that you continue to stay engaged. With that, I'll pass it back to Kurt.
Great, thank you, Jan. All right, our final activity here tonight is an open question and answer session. Want to remind folks how to submit questions. Through the chat feature, click on the chat box and the chat will open, and there you can type in a question and make sure you have everyone selected so all panelists will see that. Once again, on your phone, you got to click the 3 dots on the lower left to get into that chat. You can also call in your questions to the number there on the lower left, 612-799-6816, or you can email them directly to Alicia Uzark at hdr.com. And if you'd like to avoid typing or calling that number and want to speak out loud, you can raise your hand. And to do that, you have to click on the participants panel, and there you'll find your name. And then once you hover over your name, a little hand that looks like that will pop up. You click that hand, and that will let us know that you'd like to ask us a question, and we'll unmute your microphone at that point. So just to kind of get things started here, the 3 questions that we have on the left of the screen. What other questions do you have? What are your concerns or interests that you have from seeing this information tonight, and what would you like to learn more about? Give you a few minutes to think about that. While we're waiting for any questions to come in, I'll check in with Helen, who is with Osman, our interpreter. Helen, do we have any questions coming in through the interpretation line?
This is the interpreter, Osman. No, I didn't hear any questions coming through the interpretation line.
Okay, thank you, Osman.
Thank you.
Give folks a few more minutes to think if we have any questions. Not seeing anyone's. Oh, we do have a hand up here. Yep, I just saw it. All right, we're going to unmute you and go ahead and give us your question.
How do you access the Cedar Lake Trail?
Yeah. Just to repeat that for everybody, how do we access the Cedar Lake Trail? Gabe, I'll pass it over to you.
Sure, and it might be easiest if someone could briefly go to a slide that actually just shows the graphic of that. But the main idea would be to use the trailhead area. See if we can get there. Really provides a nice direct connection into our trail that connects between. Yeah, there we go. So you'll see off to the left of your screen the Cedar Lake Trail, And then our extension is the Minnehaha Creek Greenway Trail, which really runs the length of the site all the way over to Cottageville Park. We can also see there's likely going to be connections up in the Alatis development side as well. But we're really thinking of this area as being sort of the primary access and having some maps and signage, as well as some resting areas so that it really is sort of celebrated as that connection to the Cedar Lake Trail.
Great. Thank you, Gabe.
Understand where this.
You may not be muted.
All right. Moving on to our next question. How will this construction fit in with the current Blake Road light rail construction? The participant notes that Blake Road South will be torn up coming this spring. Gabe, do you want to start with that one as well?
Sure. Do we have, is the question in the chat box? I want to make sure that we're.
Yep, this one's in the chat.
Okay.
Yep. First one after the Mentimeter information.
Gotcha. Well, we are, of course, in contact with the LRT folks, and you know, really, this site is, you know, it's going to be reliant the development on the LRT coming to make it successful. So we've been planning the design at this point really to integrate with the future station and make sure that those connections are really clear. As far as the actual construction schedule, that will be worked out in the next couple of months as Alatis really kind of finalizes their timeline and as their plans get finalized. We're gonna also, I think this gets at the question, really it is a game of coordination, and so we'll be working very closely with Alatis as we think about how and when to construct our portion of the site. So we're in weekly talks with the developer to make sure that we're advancing our project in a way that won't cause multiple rounds of construction. The goal would be to roll everything together as much as possible so that we're really just disturbing the site once. And then continuing to work with, again, the LRT office to make sure that any sort of areas of the site that we need to use for storing construction materials, you know, for both parties, that we're coordinating all of that right up front.
All right. Thank you, Gabe. Our next question from Ann is, are you planning on stocking the creek with trout? I think, Gabe, you can probably take that one as well.
Yeah, there are no plans as part of this project to do any stocking of the creek. You know, we do, the creek is somewhat seasonal, as people are probably aware of. So there are times when there's plenty of water for all the sort of recreational activities that we've talked about, including fishing, but as well as kayaking and tubing. But we don't have any plans to really, except for doing some stabilization along the creek and of course creating those landing and touch points between the creek and the land. We don't have any plans as far as changing the fish species or stocking.
Alrighty, our next question from KH. One thing I wonder about is parking or access and how that fits into the design and environmental impact. Example, if you envision people bringing their kayaks or envision people non-local to bring the neighborhood visiting, where would they park? I think parking is the main question there, access, and then how that impacts environmental design. Jan, I see you just turned your camera on. Did you want to address this one?
Yeah, I'll talk a little bit about parking. One of the unique things about this site and what makes the site so exciting is its proximity to a regional trail and a light rail station. And so the site has really been designed to be very bicycle and pedestrian and friendly and transit oriented. However, there will be parking along the spine road in the development portion of the site, and there will be structured parking as part of the development that will serve future residents as well as visitors to the site and the commercial areas.
All right. Thank you, Jan. Just reading our next one here. Gabe, I think you'll take this one as well. Concerned that Cedar Lake Trail segment needs widening to make the mixing of high-speed trail traffic and slow entrance from the Minnehaha Creek Greenway coming in at high angles to have less conflict. Maybe that's a combination answer for Jan and Gabe.
Yeah, well, sorry, I'm just looking in the chat right now. Yeah, if either Jan or someone from Alatus wants to, I know there's been lots of discussions, and this is something that, of course, the city and has reviewed in those plans. So I don't want to speak on behalf of Alatus. If someone is on the line that could speak to that.
What I will say is that there have been discussions with Three Rivers Park District, who operates the Cedar Lake Regional Trail, and they definitely had concerns about a lot of bicyclists are riding really fast and flying down Cedar Lake Trail. And so they had suggested having more gentle angles coming into the site, so to prevent that sort of bicycle pedestrian conflict coming off of the regional trail into the site. And Three Rivers staff were consulted as far as this development. I will say that the Three Rivers Park District is in the process of doing master plans for several of its regional trails, including the Cedar Lake Regional Trail. And we did have conversations with them in that master planning process with regard to what was being proposed for the 325 Blake Road site.
I'd like to jump in here for a second too. It looks like we passed over one of Eric's earlier questions about the bike and pedestrian traffic coming from the west. It looks like it needs to make quite a sharp turn to access restaurants, potentially inducing cutting across the ground. And the design ease the angle to the restaurants. We can certainly do that. There are, one of the things you don't see in this plan, there are two other touch points to the Cedar Lake Trail from the development project. This is the one area where the Greenway has an opportunity to touch the Cedar Lake Trail. And as Jan said, we have been in conversations with Three Rivers Parks District to design this trailhead here, and we'll do our best to make sure that the angles that we come in at to the Cedar Lake Trail are doing their best to try and limit any bike accidents there. But there are going to be multiple opportunities to access restaurants and other destinations within the development from Cedar Lake Trail. This is just one of three along the length of this development.
Thanks, Jeff. Was there anyone else on the line from Alatus that wanted to address any of that? I know we had one representative online from there.
Hey, Kurt, I think that was a good representation.
Excellent. Thanks, Bart. All right, Jeff, maybe you and Andrew Montgomery, I'll pass this one over to you. Environmentally speaking, heavy human use of or near waterways such as tubing, picnicking, and other activities does not always bode well for the flora and the fauna of that environment. Are there thoughts and mitigations with the design process about how people will be able to enjoy, recreate in the area without harming or overly disturbing the wildlife and water quality? Some examples they bring up are litter, noise, trash.
Andrew
Jeff or
Judd,
Andrew Montgomery?
I saw you turn your camera on. Did you want to take that one?
Well, we've talked about it, and I think it's a good comment. You know, there's a theme of what we're trying to do is restoration, and maybe you guys can talk to this a little bit as well. But you know, it's a good point. We don't want to provide, you know, an overall, like we're opening up the entire creek corridor for access. I mean, one of the goals of the design is to provide specific points that are of access to kind of keep people in, you know, certain areas, and then allow other areas to be more restorative along the banks. So that's one of the things we're looking at, because, you know, we've got some of the same concerns as well. So it's kind of limiting that access points. And also, we've even talked about creating, you know, what we've gone over tonight are kind of the more, I would say, significant access points that have, you know, a defined area. We may do some small little, almost like small pathways to the creek, just to kind of, you know, direct traffic in there, and keep some spaces to a restored environment where it's planted and it can maintain, you know, the vegetation that's more natural to the creek, and then other areas that are more for human interaction. So that's certainly something that we're trying to take into account as we've laid this out. And one of the things maybe that you can't see exactly, you know, I thought the graphics we went over, hopefully you guys enjoyed those, and they're really representative of where we're headed. But one of the things you may not be able to see is sort of the elevation differences, and there are portions of the bank that are more like a creek bank that we would maintain in a, you know, its natural setting. So those in themselves will be difficult for the public to access, whereas like the landing area is already a very flat area. So we are trying to stay within, you know, the existing grading plan of the creek corridor, just kind of trying to maintain that to what it was, and do this nice balance of, you know, allowing people improved access to the creek, improved enjoyment of it, while kind of maintaining some of that natural aspect of the creek corridor.
Yeah, I think those are good points. One thing I would add too is there's an opportunity with the interpretive elements on the site to start to educate people about the importance of the environment, and to build a greater sense of stewardship for taking care of.
One last piece to that question. We haven't gotten into detail on restoration, but we do have teammates that specialize in creek restoration, interfluve. There's been wetlands identified through the corridor that we are staying out of. And a big portion of this project being the pond, we feel that we're really doing right by the creek, we're now treating a bunch of stormwater that used to go directly into the creek untreated. So we hope and we feel that by the end of this project, we're improving that corridor considerably compared to what it is now today.
All right, great. Thanks, everyone. All right, I'll answer this next question. Will this presentation and the recording of the presentation be available somewhere once the meeting is over tonight? Yes, the answer to that is yes. That was kind of one of the main points of recording this, so those that weren't able to join us tonight could visit the project website on the district's webpage and view this presentation, learn more about it. That'll be up later this week on the district site. The district will also have a PDF version of the slide deck, the presentation that we went through. That'll be up there tomorrow. And the district is also working on getting up an activity similar to what we did today on the Mentimeter. So if anyone wasn't able to join and vote for their different preferences, they can do that on the website as well. Our next question, maybe I'll call it that same group that just answered our last one, our landscape engineers and Andrew Judd. With the landing and the gateway, people will be wading into the creek. Can there be consideration of stepping stone across the creek for children's teams and those who are athletic enough to participate? They said that this would be a highly popular way to interact with the water.
I can kind of start, and then maybe Andrew and Jeff, if you've got it's a pretty cool idea. I like it. You know, where it would seem to make the most sense it'd be, you know, maybe over at that the gateway area, because there's already some steps down to the creek from that area. The only issue, you know, again, we're trying to balance between, you know, restoration and limited disturbance, and then you know, also hydraulic capacity. So we don't want to put something in the bottom of the creek that might, you know, potentially reduce the capacity of the creek, and it needs to be permitted as well. So I like the comment. I think it's something that we could think about and talk about a little bit. There's a safety issue, of course, that you know comes to mind with putting something like that in a couple of years. Are those stones kind of covered in algae or other things that would make it a little bit hazardous to cross? But it's kind of a neat. I was kind of thinking the same thing with the way that it faces Cottageville. You know, is there an opportunity there? So I like the comment. We'll talk it over as part of the design team and see if it's something that's feasible.
I don't
All right, great. Thank you, Andrew. All right, sounds good, Jeff. Thank you. We're getting close to the top of the hour here. Just have a few more questions. Actually, we've got time for one more question. Let me find my spot here. Maybe a follow-up one to that, more about activities and amenities. Will there be a walking trail from this park to the hospital along the creek? Whoever wants to jump in and add and answer that one.
Yeah, and I assume that that's Methodist Hospital, and the answer is yes. That's all sort of if you caught the beginning of the presentation, that's really the goal with this, the overall Greenway project, which this project is a large portion of, but only one portion. And so the goal would be to, and there are plans in the works to connect this project and the regional trail up with the rest of the trail system that the district has installed over the past several years, which would link up to the hospital.
Great. Thank you, Gabe. And that is it for our question and answer session. Thanks, everyone, for submitting those great questions that led to some really good discussion. As always, if there's more questions that come up, please reach out to our project team here, and I'll pass it to Gabe for some closing remarks.
Well, thanks again, everyone. This has been really informative to all of us who are working to try to integrate these ideas into the best possible project we can. One last note, we have a completely voluntary demographic survey that we do just try to keep track of who we're able to reach through our various email and signage that we put up to advertise these meetings. So those links are available in the chat. Again, completely voluntary, but we do appreciate sort of learning who we're reaching and who we need to do better to reach. And again, this material will be up on our project website later this week. And we certainly encourage, if you have any neighbors, family, friends who you know couldn't make it this evening but have ideas or would like to see what's going on with the project, we'd be very grateful for you to point them that direction. Otherwise, we will look to hear from you all again. And just wanted to say thanks for making it out on this Monday evening.